Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where we dive deep into the rich and fascinating world of coins and numismatics. And today, we turn our full attention to the Jefferson Nickel minted in the year 1953, a coin that represents more than just 5 cents in value. It is a piece of American history, art, and legacy. To begin with, we must understand the origins of the Jefferson Nickel series, which started in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The new nickel was introduced during the administration of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and its main purpose was to honor Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. The design of the Jefferson nickel was created by artist Felix Schlag, who submitted the winning entry in a competition hosted by the U.S. Mint. His original design was revised before final approval, and in the end, the obverse featured a left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse depicted Jefferson's famous home, Monticello, located in Virginia. The coin was first struck in 1938 at 3 major mints: the Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark, the Denver Mint with the D Mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint using the S mark. And this pattern continued through the years, including the 1953 edition which we focus on today. Now, stepping into the year 1953, we must place ourselves in the context of post-World War II America. This was a time of immense social change, economic growth, and Cold War tension. The country had just elected Dwight D. Eisenhower as president, and there was an air of cautious optimism across the nation. In the world of coinage, the U.S. Mint was adjusting to peacetime needs and had resumed full production after the restrictions and adjustments during the war years. The 1953 Jefferson Nickel was produced at 3 different locations, again, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. However, this would be the final year of regular Jefferson Nickel production at the San Francisco Mint until many years later, which gives the 1953 Jefferson Nickel a special place in numismatic history. The San Francisco Mint actually stopped striking regular issue coins after 1955, focusing instead on proof and special mint sets, and not returning to general coinage production until decades later. In total, the U.S. Mint produced more than 143 million Jefferson Nickels in 1953. The Philadelphia Mint led the way with over 76 million coins, the Denver Mint struck over 59 million, and the San Francisco Mint contributed approximately 19 million, and because of this, the 1953 Jefferson Nickel is considered the key issue of the year, not for its mintage, which was still in the millions, but for the historical significance of being among the last regular strike coins from that mint during this era. From a design standpoint, the 1953 Jefferson Nickel remains consistent with previous years. It features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with inscriptions along the rim, including "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date. 1953 on the reverse, the image of Monticello is centered with inscriptions reading "E pluribus unum," Monticello 5 cents, and United States of America. However, collectors often look at finer details such as strike sharpness, die polish, die deterioration, and plancher quality, and many Jefferson Nickels of the early 1950s can be found with weak strikes, particularly from the Denver and San Francisco mints, due to worn dies and aging equipment. Collectors today place value not just on the mint mark, but on the condition and rarity of the coin. Full steps designation is especially important. This refers to the number of clearly visible steps on the Monticello building on the reverse side of the coins that exhibit 5 or 6 full steps without interruption are graded higher and are significantly more valuable in the market. The 1953 Jefferson Nickel from Philadelphia is notoriously hard to find with full steps, making those specimens particularly prized by advanced collectors. It is also important to note the changes happening at the U.S. Mint. During the early 1950s, the Mint was working to modernize its equipment and coinage process, but still relied on traditional mechanical presses and hand-prepared dies. This meant quality control was not as consistent as modern standards, and coins from this period often exhibit variations from die-wear doubled dies, re-punched mint marks, and even some planchet issues and errors. Errors and varieties of the 1953 Jefferson Nickel are an important part of its numismatic interest. Collectors have discovered re-punched mint marks, especially on the 1953S and 1953D issues, where the mint mark was punched more than once by hand, resulting in overlapping impressions. There are also examples of die cracks chips off center strikes and lamination errors, which add to the appeal for error coin collectors and specialists. Looking deeper into the economic and cultural aspects of 1953, the nickel remained a fundamental part of daily commerce. It was used in vending machines, jukeboxes, and transportation systems. A nickel could still buy a loaf of bread or a bus fare. In many places, the average American may not have thought twice about the 5-cent coin, but it circulated heavily and carried the story of Thomas Jefferson and American ideals into the hands of millions. Jefferson as a figure is a fitting choice for a coin. He was a visionary founding father and advocate for liberty and education, and the founder of the University of Virginia. His influence on American political philosophy remains profound, and his inclusion on a widely circulated coin helps keep his legacy alive to this day. As we continue this video, we will examine examples of high-grade 1953 Jefferson nickels, look at certified population reports from grading agencies like PCGS and NGC, and analyze price trends in auctions and online markets. We will also explore stories from collectors who discovered these coins in circulation or inherited them from relatives, and we will discuss the role these nickels play in complete Jefferson nickel sets and registry collections. We will take a close look at grading standards using visual examples to show the difference between a circulated coin, a mint state coin, and a full steps example, and we will compare these coins across the three mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, explaining the minor differences in DI characteristics, metal composition, and strike quality. As we continue our exploration of the 1953 Jefferson nickel, it is important to look at the broader context of American coinage during the 1950s and how the values of this time were reflected in the coinage system. The early 1950s was a time of national rebuilding, industrial expansion, and growing prosperity, following the difficult years of World War II and the Great Depression. The United States Mint played a vital role in reflecting stability and continuity through its coin designs, and the Jefferson nickel was a symbol of that era. The coin itself was struck in a composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that had proven effective since the late 1800s. This composition remained consistent. Despite changing demands for metal during wartime, the nickel itself was part of daily commerce. But it also represented technological achievement in minting processes that were becoming increasingly complex in the post-war years. The 1953 Jefferson nickel featured no significant design changes from the 1938 original, but subtle shifts in die wear strike sharpness and planchet. Quality make this year particularly important to specialists. There were significant inconsistencies in the strike quality of the Denver and San Francisco coins, and this adds layers of complexity to grading and valuation. The San Francisco Mint, which had a rich history dating back to the California Gold Rush, was nearing the end of its regular coinage run in 1953. This makes the 1953S issue not only a low mintage coin, but one of the last circulated coins produced by that mint before it transitioned to proof and collector sets only for the next several decades. Now let us go deeper into the minting process itself. In 1953, coins were still struck using screw presses and manually prepared dies. This meant that human error was more frequent and differences between coin batches were more visible. Mint marks were hand-punched onto dies, and this led to a wide variety of mint mark placements on 1953D and 1953S coins. The Jefferson nickel as a series is one of the most collected coin types in the United States. Many collectors build full date and mint mark sets with a focus on condition and varieties, and the 1953 coins provide a particularly interesting challenge for these collectors because of the limited availability of full-step specimens and the uneven quality of minting across locations. Let us look closely now at the full steps designation, which is awarded when the steps on the Monticello reverse are fully struck and separated. Collectors highly value this designation as it reflects the sharpest strikes and best preserved dies. Coins with 5 or 6 full steps are rare, especially from 1953, and this makes them highly sought after by advanced numismatists. In population reports from major grading companies like PCGS and NGC, we find that 1953 Jefferson nickels in mint state with full steps are extremely limited in number and often command high premiums at auction. For example, a 1953 D nickel with full steps in MS-66 condition can sell for several $100s, and in some rare cases over $1,000 when the strike is exceptionally clean. As we shift into the collector culture surrounding the Jefferson nickel, we see a vibrant community of hobbyists, dealers, researchers, and auction houses who actively study, trade, and catalog these coins. Collectors often search for raw examples in old rolls, coin jars, and estate sales, hoping to find unrecognized treasures among common pieces. Specialist collectors also pursue error coins, which were more common in the pre-modern minting era. Examples include off-center strikes, where the design is visibly shifted to one side, clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing from the edge, die cracks that appear as raised lines across the surface, and lamination errors, where the surface layer of the metal separates during striking. All of these can be found among 1953. Jefferson nickels, and each error tells a story of how the minting process sometimes broke down under pressure. Turning now to the proof versions, although no proof nickels were struck in 1953 due to the temporary suspension of proof sets from 1943 to 1949, and their reintroduction in 1950, proof Jefferson nickels were only made in Philadelphia starting in 1950 and continuing thereafter. Thus, 1953 does not have a proof version, but collectors often compare it to proof-like examples which occasionally appear among high-grade business strikes with especially reflective fields and sharp detail. Looking at the design of the Jefferson nickel in a broader cultural sense, we see the portrait of Jefferson by Felix Schlag as a product of 1930s neoclassical design. His rendering of Jefferson was based on sculptural representations and historical paintings, while Monticello on the reverse was inspired by classical architecture and designed to symbolize Enlightenment reason and individual liberty concepts that Jefferson championed. In fact, Monticello was more than just a home. It was a reflection of Jefferson's personality, his intellectual curiosity, and his architectural talent. Its inclusion on the coin was not just a backdrop, but a representation of the American ideal, the pursuit of knowledge balanced with a life of service and humility. Finally, let us turn our attention to investing and collecting trends. The Jefferson nickel series is often undervalued compared to silver coinage, but this provides a unique opportunity for collectors to obtain historically significant coins at accessible prices, especially for mid-century issues like the 1953 nickels building a complete set with full steps. Examples from each mint remains a challenge that attracts both new and experienced collectors. In conclusion, the 1953 Jefferson nickel is far more than a simple 5-cent coin. It is a bridge between the wartime economy and the prosperous years that followed it, is a closing chapter for the San Francisco Mint's role in circulating coinage. It is a product of early 20th century design paired with mid-century minting technology, and it is a challenge to collectors who seek quality, rarity, and history in every piece they examine. This concludes the extended historical narrative, but we will now proceed with visual comparisons, coin grading walkthroughs, auction price data, and collector interviews in the remainder of this video.